Good morning, fam. So today I read the first letter from Paul to Timothy, also known as First Timothy. This letter reads and it feels almost like a commencement speech. You kind of get the feeling that um, it's a charge from an older man to a younger man on, hey, this is life and go live it well. And that's the feeling that I got when I read through it this morning. He Paul is the person who brought Timothy to the Lord. He calls him his true son in the faith, and so he discipled him, and he's worked with him and trained with him, and they've spent time together. Timothy has learned how to work in the church in ministry and how to deal with people that are struggling through things and all of this stuff. And so Paul is just kind of in this first letter to him, just summarizing all of these charges. He tells them in chapter 1, listen, the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. And so he kind of sets that as the standard, right? And then he starts talking about different relationships. In chapter 2, he talks about governmental relationships, that we are to pray for our leaders. Why? So that we can live a tranquil and peaceable life in godliness and dignity. So that's why we pray for our leaders, so that we can do that. So we can live in peace, that we can live godly lives, and that we can live in dignity. And so that, and from there he goes on to instructing people on how they are to the types of people that they need to be. Talks about women. He talks about elders, he calls them overseers. We call them elders, people that are leading the church, deacons, other people that are in leadership roles in the church. That they are, the characteristics that they are to have. He talks about in chapter 4, the beginning of that, saying, listen, you need to train yourself for the purpose of godliness, in verse 7. So it's this idea and attitude that this is work. The Christian life is not something that comes easy, and you don't become godly and holy and wise and all of that just, by osmosis. You do it through work, through training. Later on, the last verse in chapter 4, he says, pay close attention to yourself and your teaching. Persevere in these things. So he's saying both are important. The way you live your life, who you are, the type of person you are, and your teaching, what your doctrine is, your theology. He says, pay close attention to both of these. Persevere in both of these. He talks about honoring widows. He talks about just the how worship is to be conducted in the church. So it's a very practical letter. And like I said, it did, to me, at least in this take, it read almost like a commencement speech that you would hear, one of these wise, famous people coming up to a group of youngsters who are just graduating, high school or college or something, and just giving them the charge. This is how you are to live a purposeful and meaningful life. And that's kind of the feel that you get from Paul's first letter to Timothy.